Welcome to Adventures in Life. I'm Earl Beecher, your host. I'm very pleased our guest today is Peggy Van Pelt. Peggy did a show with me a while back, and she gave me 3 books that she had written, and I read them, and one of them in particular, I don't know quite how to describe it, but it pushed all my buttons. And I called her up and I said, Peggy, I've read your book. I've never been so upset by anything. And she was apologetic. And she said, what do you mean, Earl? And I said, well, it challenged me like I have rarely been challenged in my life. And the title of this book is Putting Your Talent to Work. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know, at this point in my life, what have I done? What am I doing? And it was challenging, Peggy. That's no other way to describe it.
Well.
And so I threatened her. I said, I want you back in the studio so we can talk about this in more depth. So today the show is about creativity and putting your talent to work and a few other things. And I'm happy to introduce to you Peggy Van Pelt.
Well, thank you. I think it would be fair to the audience to show them what the result was.
Oh, dear.
Can we do that?
I got busy and finished my own book. Okay, we've covered that.
Okay. And that was the result of putting your talent to work.
That was the result. She challenged me. Yeah. I had a half-done kind of thing. I said, it's time to get to work.
Well, good. Good. I'm glad you did that. Well, I've been busy since you were last here on the show with me, or I was last here with you, is the way I suppose.
Yes, you have.
We really ought to say that.
You're one of these people that is never not busy.
Well, this is true. This is true. This is the latest book that I've
You've
had the
written that
pleasure of
since
done.
the last show.
Yes, since the last show.
So we've each written a book.
We've
since
each
the last
written
show.
it. That's
Good
quite
for
right.
us. Okay.
And actually, I compiled and edited this book, 125 Imagineers, and those are the talented people who work at Walt Disney Imagineering. And Walt Disney Imagineering is the design company and the production company for the theme parks that Disney builds.
You had a lot to do, we explained on the first show,
yes,
with designing Disneyland and Disney World.
I had a lot to do with the production aspect of that, and then later I went into the talent development work, which allowed me to work with all these wonderfully talented people, and my job was to inspire them, but in truth, they inspired me.
It works together.
It works together, right.
Oh, creativity. Right. There's nothing like being among creative people and getting the juices flowing.
That's right. You know, if you want to be a passionate person, stand next to somebody who's on fire with passion. And that's what happens at Imagineering all the time. The people there are
that must be a ball.
It is a ball. It really is. And so when it came to writing this book, we were particularly thrilled with the opportunity to have 125 different Imagineers offer their thoughts on what they do for creativity, their personal creative exercises.
How they get inside themselves and start pulling out the...
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Exactly. And the way this book came to be was that we had put out this one, which I showed you last time I was here. It's
yes,
The Imagineering Way.
I loved it.
And it's a book, about 92 Imagineers participated in writing that book. And they were expressing their ideas about creativity.
Yes.
And the editor, the managing editor, Jody Revinson, after she saw this and saw how well it was selling and just what a delight it was in the school systems for the kids and the teachers.
So the kids are reading this?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
So what happened was that she decided that if we did a book on exercises, that might just be the ticket. So this book is about...
Now, wait a minute.
What?
Exercises?
Creative exercises.
Things you can do to get yourself
That's
moving
right.
creatively.
That's right. That's
I
right.
didn't know there was exercise. This isn't meditation or something, is it?
No, no, no. Although some Imagineers do use meditation for their inspiration for ideas. And
Okay, well, tell
some
me
do.
about the ones.
Well, let me tell you about the book itself and what
Okay.
we wanted to accomplish.
This is the workbook now.
This is the workbook where we have over 125 exercises for people to use. And what we wanted to show in this book was the basic principles we use at Imagineering for creative problem solving. Diversity, storytelling, imagination, fun were the major things we wanted this book to reflect.
You hit one of my favorite words there. I think it's everybody's favorite word
Which
in the
one is
English
that?
language. Fun.
Fun, exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
this is going to be fun and everybody's turned on.
Right, exactly. Now, we had, we researched over 100 books on creativity. And by the way, there are so many wonderful books out there on creativity. It was a pleasure to do it. But what we were looking for were books that were highly diverse in terms of their participation. And the reason we believe in diversity of thought is because the more diverse your thinking, the greater the potential for the creative solution.
Is this the old idea, thinking outside the box and taking a new angle on things?
It has a lot to do with that, yes.
Okay.
But actually, it's knowing when to think inside the box and when to think out of the box.
Knowing when?
Yes, because inside the box, the best example of that is Apollo 13. Remember in the scene where they came down and they had a box of stuff and they threw it on the table and they said to the fellows, okay, you've got 4 hours to figure out only with these items how to solve the problem. That's thinking within a very tight box, and you can be extremely creative when you're in that box. But sometimes you need to think outside of the box. And what this book does is it addresses both of those issues. And the more diverse your thinking, the greater your capability for thinking inside as well as outside the box. So I have about out of the 125 people that sent us information, they represent 50 to 60 different disciplines, 50 to 60 different ways of thinking, educational differences, value differences, language, professional language differences. So we got the diversity we wanted in terms of...
That was the first step.
That was the first step. So we have architects, business people, a number of engineers, we've got secretaries, we've got vice presidents, a huge number of people, and cross sections of people as well. So that was the first step.
Was the idea to get diversity and to sort of filter out the common elements?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we wanted to fill out the common elements, but also to see exactly how people really do think. What do they really do to get their own creative juices flowing? And when I had 9 people turn in exercises on dreaming, they were secretaries, they were visual artists, they were editors, mechanical engineers. 9 people came
on
up
dreams.
and that's how they solve their creative problems.
You
through
go to bed and
dreams.
sleep on it.
That's
and
right.
Come up with the
That's
idea.
right. That's exactly
I've
right.
heard people say, "I'll sleep on it." Okay.
Right. So that we saw there that there was a common exercise. So we used 2 or 3 of them in the book to show how differently people approach the same exercise, but using their educational slant and their professional slant. So we were very happy with the diversity. And then each exercise is told as a story. It's the individual person's story. It's their exercise. And I wanted to use story in the book because that's our favorite way of communicating. You and I and the audience, everyone really prefers to communicate through story.
Once upon a time,
yes.
and everybody's right there.
Guess what happened to me on the way here?
Oh.
I mean, we start a story that way.
Yeah.
And my favorite definition for the word story comes from an Imagineer. His name is Marshall Monroe. And he says story organizes information in a way that it can be remembered and retold. And I think this is why.
What an insight.
Right. It organizes information in a way that it can be remembered and retold. And so that's why I think you and I tell stories to each other when we're communicating. So I wanted that to be reflected in the book. And that's what we do at Imagineering. We encouch everything in the story format.
Okay, at this point,
Yes.
I want to pause for a public service announcement.
Okay, please do.
So stay with us. We'll be right back with Peggy Van Pelt in just a moment. Our guest is Peggy Van Pelt. And Peggy, I'm not sure how to introduce you exactly. I know you're an author and an editor and an artist and an Imagineer, and did that cover everything?
Yeah. Well, I also am now writing for Disney Editions. So I write about Imagineering is what I'm doing now.
Okay.
So although I formally left Imagineering several years ago, I haven't really left Imagineering because I'm still writing about
Oh, it's something
them.
you'll never leave.
Oh, no.
You'll
no,
still
no.
practice it.
Yes. Yes. Once an Imagineer, always an Imagineer. And part of the reason that I love doing these books is because we can get these books out to people who want to be Imagineers and who want to think like Imagineers. And I'm hoping that it'll touch the hearts and souls of teenagers. And we have a book that we're thinking about doing, which would be for younger kids as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. You know, I was just thinking, you mentioned your books are being used in the schools.
Yes, yes.
And I would like personally, after having read them, to recommend them to the teachers in the schools as well. Not just for the kids, but the teachers. Use your imagination and make your course come alive for these young people. Make it fun.
Make it fun, exactly.
Make it fun.
Exactly. Well, you brought up an important word for me, which is imagination. And that was something that we wanted represented in the book. And I'll tell you my favorite definition for the word imagination. It comes from the work that Valerie Hunt has done in the study of the human energy system. And she defines imagination as being the place where information is first formed, then recognized, and perhaps the most profound aspect of the imagination is it has the capacity to change information. And it's deeply and richly connected to the way we learn, the way we process, how we are able to look at a situation and determine whether the same procedures we've used in the past will solve the situation, or do we need to employ something new?
Think of some way to apply.
Right.
And to find new information and bring it in and and shall we say tint the old information with the new flavor.
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes people say to me, "Oh, I'm not very imaginative." And so I ask them this question, do you worry? And
all the time.
All the time, right.
Right.
And so what is worry? And I'm not talking about a sick child, worrying about a sick child or a parent that might be elderly. I'm not talking about that. That is, in my book, justified worry. I'm talking about, am I dressed right? Or did I say the right thing to the boss? I'm talking about those kinds of things that we spend hours going over and over in our heads that are really needless. It's a negative aspect of the use of the
doesn't lead anywhere anyway.
No, it doesn't. And we complain about not having enough time in our busy world. So if we were able to direct our imagination in a very passionate way towards creative problem solving, rather than doing the tapes, he said, she said, if I had said this, they would have said that, the situation would have ended differently. Set that aside and begin to think about imagination as a way of solving the circumstances that we have in our lives. And in the book, we chose to use a wonderful character.
I love Disney characters.
Yes, Figment.
Figment.
Yes, that's Figment right there. He's reading a story.
Can I maybe hold this and you can
Yes.
get a close-up of Figment here?
This is Figment.
He's a little dragon, huh?
Yes, he's a little dragon.
I'm dragon most of the time.
Yes, and he came from Epcot's pavilion, the Imagination Pavilion. And he was the main character there, and of course it's a figment of your imagination. And he takes you through the book in a most wonderful way. He visualizes a lot of the exercises.
Visualizing.
And introduces them, yeah. And that sort of brings me to an exploration of the book. Can we take a look at the book? Okay, I'd love to. I'd love to.
Because I want to tell you, without having the workbook, because you've just written it.
Right.
When I was working on my own book, I just told a story. My friends read the book and they come back to me and say, Earl, we knew you were crazy because you always are in one mess after another. And then being a chaplain in the Army in a war in Korea, where there's plenty of messes to get into, and it naturally flows to the chaplain most of the time. Between your natural proclivity and the action that happened, you're funny. And I said, I wasn't meaning to be funny.
Well, you not only have to be funny, but my understanding of what a chaplain does is actually you help lead people to those alternative solutions, because generally when someone needs a chaplain, they need a creative solution. The other solutions have not worked.
That is very true.
Yeah.
And I worked with people of all faiths.
Yes.
All faiths.
Yes. Well, my dad was in the military, so I know about chaplains.
Okay, you
I
know.
I do, yeah, yeah. So I have great respect for the work they do. It's very creative work.
It is. And it's it's practical a lot of the time. It's spiritual a lot of the
Very
time. It
much
takes
so.
in everything.
Yeah, it does. It does. So,
Okay.
well, would you like to take a look at,
I would like
this?
to.
Okay. One of the things we wanted to do in this book was to have a wonderful balance of text and visuals, images,
I love books with lots of pictures
yes.
in them.
And we wanted the pictures to be purposeful. For instance, this is a lovely little exercise done by Bill Wilcox.
Is this showing here?
And what Bill wanted people to do was to combine ideas. And what he suggests in his exercise is that we write down all of the ideas that we're considering. And then we copy that list. And then we put the copy right next to the original and move the copy up and down and see how ideas combine as they run across the page. So to illustrate this, Chuck Ballou did a wonderful job of showing how you could do it visually, just taking different ideas and run them up and down the page and see which ones match or which ones don't. And the ones that don't match probably have more creative potential than the ones that do. So this was one of the ways that we wanted to work with these particular.
Oh, that's creative.
Yeah.
I know. I'm telling you, this book.
It's great fun. Here's one of my favorite pages in the book because it shows what we were doing in terms of encouraging people to use the book.
Creativity, the afterglow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and why do we continue doing it again? Let me read you a little statement from Ann Ching Pinchon. She says, "It's the same feeling you get from any long, slow stretch. Your muscles tingle, they want to laugh, they feel so good. It's the same feeling when you finish a great project." So it's the afterglow that we're talking about here. But what you get to see are the 3x5 cards that we encourage people to use, writing your ideas out on Post-its.
Reducing it to writing does a lot, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And in fact, this is an example of how we wanted people to use the journal. And that was a surprise, because one of the things I found is that many, many Imagineers do keep idea journals. And so we decided to put the journal pages, indicate them, in hopes that people would get the idea to write in their own journals. And of course they can write here. The other thing we did was we put what we called graffiti. And these are just comments that people had made about creativity. In this one, Arden Ashley says, "There's really no limit to play."
Oh, I love that.
That's her thought. And Chuck Ballou says, "Creativity is my religion. It's fun."
Back to that word again.
Back to that word again. Now, the reason we put the graffiti here is because we want people to write in the margins. So we thought if we wrote in the margins, they would.
My textbooks were always scribbled, underlined, margins.
That's what we wanted in this book. That's absolutely, absolutely what we wanted. We wanted this book to be a reflection of how we think creatively. And here's an example. The editor did this one, which I thought was fabulous. We have our legal counsel, Peter Steinman, submitted his creative approach to working with contracts. He has to visualize the end result of the contract.
Does the wording say what it is meant to lead to?
Right. And as he's visualizing, what he's doing is he's thinking about all the things that could possibly go wrong, and has he included them in his contract. So because he starts at the end, meaning he's visualizing the end result.
He knows what he wants.
Right. So what we did was we flipped this so that the heading is at the bottom, and we started his piece at the end.
Now that's creative.
Yes. So what we were basically saying here is that this book reflects how Imagineers approach creativity. And one of my favorite things in here is a license. Let me just show you this. This is called the Creative License, and I'll tell you the story behind this. A wonderful woman named Bernie Mosier was an engineer working in it was Paris Disneyland.
Paris Disneyland.
Right, when it was just starting. And she was working with a terrific interior designer named Barbara Whiteman. And Bernie kept saying, oh, I wish I were as creative as you. I wish I were as creative as all of these people are here. And so one day when Bernie said that, Barbara sat down, took a piece of paper, and drew her a creative license and put her name on it and said, the only thing you don't have is a creative license. We do. Here's yours.
That reminds me of the Scarecrow and the Wizard of
Doesn't
Oz.
it?
You know.
Doesn't it? And
Yeah.
what Bernie said was that made such a difference to her. Somebody was giving her permission to be creative. And it meant so much to her that she was
Yes.
able to begin to think of herself as a creative person. And now she teaches yoga, and she is a director in Florida and manages creative people. So
How do you
she's-
manage creative people? I should think. I mean, really?
It's like herding cats.
Oh, yeah, right. Well described.
Yeah, it's a lot like herding cats. But the whole intention of the book was to give people permission to be creative. And one of the general themes that runs throughout the entire book is that people truly are creative. Whether we choose to use it or not is another
Everybody
question.
has the gift.
Everybody has the gift.
They do.
They do. They do. We may not recognize it because some people have such a narrow perspective on creativity. And I think this is an area, if I can talk about the schools for just a moment, I think this is an area that is deeply problematic within the schools. What is not understood is that creativity requires a great deal of critical thinking. It's not memorization. It's not going after a test score. It's not going into the professor or the high school teacher and saying to them, what does it take to get an A? You tell me and I'll do it. That's not what this is about. Creativity.
Well, you can tell somebody, well, you have to pass the exam, but I want to tell you it's harder to write an exam than it is to take one.
Yes, it is.
It's hard to phrase a question so it doesn't give away the answer,
Right.
and yet it goes after a specific answer.
Right.
I was on that end of it for a few years,
Yes.
and that was hard.
It's very hard. It's very hard. It's very hard to be a teacher. And it's extraordinarily difficult when you have students coming up to you saying, I want the formula for being a success. You tell me exactly how to get an A in your class and I'll do exactly what you want.
Well, I've had young people come in for counseling and say, Dr. Beecher, you've got 2 minutes. Tell me what I do the rest of my life.
Yes.
And I say, I don't even know you, you know?
Right, right. And that's not what it's about. Creativity is about critical thinking. It's, I'd say, a good 70% critical thinking. You have to be able to look at the facts, assess what they are, and put them together, arrange them in ways that make sense.
And you have to have an objective in mind.
Yes, you do. And a goal.
There's some sort of a goal you have in mind, and then you think of what I've got to work with,
Right.
what additional I need
That's right.
to do the goal.
That's right. That's right. And you find creativity in science, and they call it innovation. You find creativity in art, and you find it in design, which is problem solving, clearly problem solving.
And sometimes it comes from a direction you never dreamed of.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So what I'm hoping will happen with these books is that people will begin to realize that we solve everyday problems generally 2 ways, or 3 ways, I should say. 1, we don't solve them. That's a choice, and we live with them. 1 is that we try to solve them in a routine way, and if that works, fine. We can scratch that problem off our list. And then there is the problem that has to be solved creatively. Homemakers do this all the time. Mechanics do it all the time. Teachers do it all the time. Nurses have to do it all the time. Each has their box that they work within, and sometimes they have to work outside of that box. But it takes the same set of critical thinking skills, creative thinking skills, problem-solving skills. They all work together.
And when it works, it's fun.
And when it works, it's so fun because you
It's-
get the
there's
solution.
a feeling of a genuine reward.
Oh, there is.
Rather than frivolous fun. I mean,
Yes.
there's a satisfaction kind of
Yes,
fun.
yes, exactly, exactly. I've been working in the Glendale High School with a group of art, an art class there, a group of kids. And we've been doing a lot of the exercises out of this book and out of the Imagineering Way. And the result of that has been that they have such a finer appreciation for everything.
Yes.
For everything, not just art.
They're telling me we have to wrap it up.
Okay,
Peggy,
let's do
thank
that.
you so much for
All
being
right,
our
it
guest
was my
today.
pleasure.
It's just a joy to see you and to read your books. And as I said, her book pushed all my buttons, and it'll do the same for you if you
Yes.
if you try reading it. And thank you for joining us for Adventures in Life, and please join us soon again. Peggy,
Okay, does that
thank
do it for you?
That did it.